Really nice to be here today. It's a sign that you want to have real change. And a good way to drive real change is actually to put pressure on companies, like DTAC, to put pressure on us to do the right thing and be a good company, but also acknowledge companies that are executing with high standards. Here is what the consumers told us. A good company is a company that's good to me. It's a company that have good products, good prices, good service, and of course, no cheating. But this is not enough. To be a good company, you also need to drive your business. You need to operate your business in a responsible way. The consumers can get so much more by just asking for it. And I'm going to talk about 3 myths in Thailand that holds the consumers back. So the first one, fair competition just happens. If I fly to Chiang Mai, if I did this in 2003, it was super expensive. If I fly to Chiang Mai today, how does it look like? It only costs 2,000 baht for a round trip. Why is that? What happened? What happened was deregulation. So more players were allowed to fly domestically in Thailand. So does fair competition matter? I would say yes. If you only have 1 or 2 companies in the market, they don't really need to innovate. They don't really need to have good service because the customers, they don't have anywhere else to go. And also with the market, if you have a monopoly in the market or even a duopoly in the market, you don't want to have new companies coming in. And one way, of course, to prevent other companies from coming in is to pay bribes to key stakeholders. And of course, paying bribes, that's wrong, it's illegal. But on top of that, where does the money to pay bribes come from? It comes from you guys. It comes from the customers. But another area that's important is what we call good governance. And what we really mean is that we run, as a company, we run our business in a responsible way. Many confuse it with this CSR thing. So they think good governance is if you go out and plant trees once a year as a company. There's nothing wrong with CSR. CSR is clearly important, of course. But I would say it's a drop in the ocean. We want to change as companies. We need to change the way we drive our core business. That's the only way how we can change and become better companies. You know, it's around 60,000 telecom towers in Thailand. And it's been many, many hundreds of severe accidents when it comes to telecom towers. And of course, you can say, not my responsibility. It's a subcontractor's responsibility to fix this. But it's not. It's also our responsibility. At DTAC, we have a zero accident policy. We go out in the field. We do a lot of audits. We do a lot of inspections with our subcontractors, and we also do a lot of education. And so far, that's really been paying off with no fatal accidents with the workers employed by DTAC. So you, as consumers in Thailand, you don't only deserve good products. And probably one of the most difficult rules for us to enforce is zero tolerance to corruption. It's far beyond paying bribes. So it demands, for example, DTAC, we cannot invite important people to the golf course to play golf and pay for a hugely expensive green fee. We cannot give gifts unless they are very, very minor value with a DTAC logo on it. We cannot. And the reason for us doing this is very important. We, as DTAC, we don't want to influence key stakeholders to our benefit. So we want to have a society with independency and fair competition. But let me be frank here. Us operating with high standards also require that consumers and you guys as customers think that high standards are important. That you really think that companies operating in a good way is important. And that leads me to the last myth, the third myth, that change can only come from the top. But actually, as a consumer, you have an immense power if you just tap into it. And one really good example of this is what happened to Nike. This was is a story from in the beginning of the 90s, where there was a report showing that Nike used child labor. Nike had very poor working conditions and even abuse in their sweatshop where they produced their shoes. And consumers saw that, and they became more and more angry, and what happened, of course, they stopped buying Nike shoes. And after a while, the Nike CEO had to come out himself and say, hey, Nike is now synonymous to child labor, synonymous to abuse and poor working conditions. So in that aspect, I would say consumers had won. And since then, Nike has really cleaned up. So I also believe that Thailand is at the tipping point. I believe that consumers also in Thailand want change. Consumers, to make the change, is not that difficult. They just need to start being more demanding. Expect that those brands operate the business with a really high standard. And if they don't, you should have the courage, like the Nike customers, to ditch that brand. It's actually as simple as that to make change happen. Cup on cup.